Hello, and welcome to the post-break session. This is the early adoption of new tools. My name's Mark Lefebvre. I'm the token bookseller on the panel, and I think I'm here because I have adopted something early, and it wasn't just a textbook that I adopted at the McMaster University bookstore. I adopted print on demand in the local store, and I could talk about it for hours, but I promise you, don't worry, I won't. I'm here to introduce our panelists. I'm going to do a brief introduction of each of them. They're going to talk a little bit about what it is that they have adopted, what it is they're doing now, and then we're going to speculate on where this is going. We're going to look at some of the things, some of the measurables that currently exist, some of the things that can't be measured, and then we're going to talk about some of the challenges as well that we've been facing. So welcome to the session. Again, my name is Mark Lefebvre. I'll be moderating. To my right is Marissa Benedetto. She's the executive producer at HarperCollins. She supervises the HD video studio for all the imprints. She's created over 36 digitally enhanced ebooks for Apple and Amazon. Established a video studio at HarperCollins in New York, the first of its kind in any publishing house, and considers the user experience to be paramount. To Marissa's right is John Sawyer from Raincoast. He's the CEO of Raincoast Books, a company he joined in 1993 as a tech geek, in the systems department. For the past couple of years, John's led the design and creation of the proprietary ecatalogue system that can be used in selling environments with or without internet access, a tool that's currently used to sell books in Canada for 22 publishers. And to John's right is Susan Ruzala, who's the sales and marketing director for Galley. This is a service that enables publishers to deliver digital galleys and press kits to professional readers. We'll be talking about that. A guest blogger for various publishing websites, Susan is consulted with publishing technology companies on business strategy and ventures and leads international marketing ventures. So I want to give each person a chance to talk about the exciting things that they're involved in, and then we'll have some roundtable discussions. I will invite questions when we get to this discussion point. I'll try and keep an eye out for hands in the air so we can keep the discussion going. So Marissa, would you like to start off?
Sure. I feel that enhanced ebooks is perhaps a new medium. I think it's a tool in that it's helping tell stories in a new way. We have a video studio inside the publishing house, and what my job really is it's actually a production company that is much like a TV or a very small film production company. We have a small staff, and we shoot, edit, produce. We sometimes will outsource animation. We have very short production schedules. We're working with hundreds of authors. We're producing titles worldwide. Right now, we're on the iBookstore for Apple, and you can see enhanced ebooks through the Kindle app on the iPad. But I anticipate that we should be on many devices as the devices continue to roll out. So it's a new tool and also a new reader experience.
Thank you very much. John Sawyer.
Well, I'm here to talk about our e-catalog, but just a note about publishers' print catalogs and e-catalogs in general. Publishers' print catalogs have been around forever, and they're always have been targeted at intermediaries, which puts them on the less sexy end of what the kind of stuff we've been talking about at the conference here in the last day. But we believe those intermediaries are still very important. We're a print book distributor, but we promote and sales and market the works that our publishers give us, and that we're happy if that spills over into their e-sales as well. So we've seen efforts at replacing print catalogs with online catalogs that haven't worked, and clearly the most simple electronic catalog we have is a PDF of a print catalog. But a PDF of a print catalog is, been rarely used effectively as a tool to intermediaries. They will be given a slightly new lease on life, I think, with use on the iPad with a good PDF reader like Goodreader. I think probably within a couple of years, every sales rep in the world will have an iPad if they don't already have one. So that's one level that you can, or one simple level you can get into an electronic catalog with. But there's a lot of other limitations there. So online catalogs, we have the Catalyst thing. We have whatever Book Manager is doing, egalleys in the States. And what we've done, though, is take a very different approach. We've concentrated on an e-catalog that is really presentation-oriented and is really aimed to be a tool for the sales rep to interact with the still existing bookseller, because we are still bullish on the future of print. So we think that that interaction between our sales reps and booksellers, and also between our publicists and media, another instance where e-catalogs can come into play, is very important. We want our publishers' catalog entries or display or the way we present their titles to be very distinctive, and that's why we went ahead and did a version of an e-catalog that can run offline or online. And we also have a version that can go onto an iPad and be used in that context. So talk about that as we go through.
Thanks, John. Susan?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. And I'm excited to tell you a little bit about NetGalley if you aren't already familiar with us. So what we do is deliver digital galleys to professional readers. And I was happy to hear Patrick, thank you, use the term professional readers. And when we say that, we're really talking about the book reviewers, the bloggers, the media folks, booksellers, librarians, and even some educators who are using our site to access secure digital galleys of titles from about 85 publishers currently. There are close to 23,000 professional readers registered on the site right now. That number has been growing pretty rapidly, and that's been really fun to watch. And the site really works in two ways. One way is that publishers invite their contacts to view their titles securely on NetGalley. So we have a number of different tools, one of them primarily a widget that you can just pop into an email or on a web page that allows you to direct your contacts to view that title securely. So that widget's being used as broadly as you can possibly imagine. Our publicists are using it to pitch their media contacts. Library marketing folks are using that to reach out to librarians. Sales reps are using that when they're visiting their retail accounts. Editors are using that when they're selling foreign rights. It's kind of as broad as you want it to be. And then, of course, the other piece of what we're doing is building the NetGalley community on the site and allowing publishers to come and interact with our community through a number of different marketing programs.
Thank you very much. So the first question that I had that I'm curious to see the experiences that you've had is related to conversion. So imagining this thing that died years ago called the book, that's kind of the birth of, well, BookNet Canada, Tech Forum, all that stuff. But I'm curious about the conversion. You converting into video, converting from print catalog to e-catalog, and converting into NetGalley. Two things I'd like you guys to talk about is the cost, and then looking at potentially, and the cost isn't just money, but it's resources and time, and then looking at what you've seen as evidence of the net benefits of that. Is it worth it, and when is it worth it? Mm-hmm. And I just figure we could go free flow. And someone wants to jump in first. I won't stop you.
Go ahead, please.
Well, we at Raincoast, we love software. We love books, but we also love software. We always have some software project going on. We used to use software to help us create print catalogs, so it wasn't that big a leap to having this idea. We've spent a lot of effort on this. We've met weekly for 8 months, not every week, but most weeks. Hired a programmer in Germany to help us with it. Got feedback from our reps and from customers, done little how would this work for you in the customer environment, how would this work for you in the sales rep environment. And we still are doing that same iterative process where we can go and discover how an e-catalog will work in different circumstances, because that's, in our context anyway, that's one of the issues. there are so many different environments out there that the selling cycle can take, from all the way from selling the chain, one of 8 buyers, you're using a projector, they're pretty savvy about the information they need to know and don't need to know, all the way down to I'm in a gift store that has no computer, just a cash register. So there's a huge variety in, does the account give you an order when you're there, when you're not there? So we are still walking through all those things, although we've spent a lot of time doing research and talking with people on it, and started to do our trials. So we can talk a little bit about our trials. We had, obviously in the selling experience, traditional selling experience, the rep and the trade account both have a print catalog. And we're telling our reps, take a laptop, give them the print catalog, so that we're very soft start, get used to the application. But we took one of our forward-looking reps in the Maritimes and said, take in an iPad and show them the iPad. And she met with actually great success in doing that. So being able to hand over an iPad and say, walk through these titles worked very well, because it was so similar to the experience that a trade person would have. Did I sort of answer your question? We've spent a lot of effort on it. We are seeing some good results to date. We're not going to stop. We're going to keep
Okay, so it's kind of an open-ended. You are hopeful to see that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pay off and-
It's what we've discovered in this process is that we forget, or in Trade Hub, maybe some people don't, but we've realized what an important thing a print catalog is a pre-selling tool. And digital catalogs, or whether they're online or they're like ours, either way, are fantastic things for sales reps to organize themselves pre-sales. So that's the very first standout-ish thing for a payback for us. Yeah.
The question is the plan to get rid of the print catalog forever?
Well, I got to tell you, one of the reasons we did this is because we fear that we won't have print. We use our publishers' print catalogs, and we already have one publisher who won't give us any, and we have to just print out a bunch of stuff. PDF and pages. We fear those catalogs are going to go away, so we need to have something. It's not our plan to absolutely stop having print catalogs. People have been doing that method of buying and selling titles at the retail level for, as old as any book buyer is. And what's the average book buyer age? Is like 44. So, habits don't change well overnight. And again, you've got that incredible myriad complexity of selling situations. So what we really expect to happen is that our catalog will coexist with print catalogs and online catalogs and net galleys, and we're going to use every possible tool that we can to sell our publishers' titles.
Sounds like your Mitch Joel likes to say it's with, not instead of. So it seems like it's an add-on for you as well. So Marissa, let's take a different track here. So we're converting what is traditionally a book with a linear format into video. Where do you start?
I think the first thing you have to decide is when you sit down and talk with either the author or the editor or the imprint team, what is their view of what an enhancement is? Because it's different to different people. For some teams, an enhancement means you take a theme from the book and you expand on it. For other teams, it means it's something completely separate from the book. You're adding on to the core story. So the first thing we have to see eye to eye on for the process to go smoothly is, well, what side do they fall on? So sometimes I'll work directly with an author, and literally we start with a phone conversation or an email. They'll come and see me in the studio. Their editor has sort of blessed the project and move forward. Some projects I'm only working with the editor. The author is either working on another project and they're deeply immersed in that and they don't want to double back, or they'll come in for an interview, or they'll come in for a shoot, but they're really letting us take the lead. So in terms of the conversions, you really, from the start, if you don't see eye to eye on what it should be, you're going to run into problems. And then we figure out what we call inline video, which means that, okay, we've decided we're going to put video or audio clips or graphics and pictures within the text of the book. We've decided it doesn't harm the flow or damage the reader experience with the book itself. And other times we'll just put everything at the back of the book. So you also have to see eye to eye. You know, some authors are very excited about this new medium, but they're not so, they don't know what to make of that. Now we're instituting other material into their work. So we have to see eye to eye on how we feel that should be. And then we're going to decide on, do we want music in it? Are we going to then just come up with a new color scheme? Are we going to use the jacket? Or are we going to expand on the jacket? Or it's really answering questions. The earlier you start answering these questions, the smoother your conversion from a book to an enhanced ebook will be. And then, of course, there's a couple Q&As towards the end. Authors almost always want to see the book. Some really don't. Some just want to leave it. If their editor likes it, they trust their editor, and they're fine with that. But I would say the conversion process is really about communicating what you're making early on. Because people, I'm even wondering in this crowd, when I say enhanced ebooks, if people, they kind of know what I'm talking about, but until you really see it laid out in the iBookstore, what that really is. And you're talking about people who are just starting out, who are new authors, to people who've written 30 books. So I think communicating and managing expectations and also being very respectful of the content are key for it to be successful.
It sounds like there's a lot of variety. I mean, just for one publisher, the different types of interactions that you can have to get from point A to point B, depending on who the editor is, who the author is, I guess how they want to approach it.
Well, HarperCollins is also a very big company, and they have many imprints that specialize in many different things. And then we have a large children's division. So each time we start a new project, I don't want to say that they're all one-offs, because we're trying to build a program and we're trying to build a scalable program. But it really is, you know, you're taking one art form and somebody who's dedicated themselves to it and instituting new things either on top of it or inside of it. So I have to say each one really is different. Now maybe when Simon Winchester, we made one with him, he was very experimental. We did some interesting things with him. When he makes his next book with us, we'll have a shorthand to communicating with him. But each time it's like having a relationship. It's almost being like a second editor with the material. So you just have to feel your way through it and really understand. I mean, sometimes people, I'm sure everybody here knows what it's like when somebody is telling you something, but what do they really mean when they're telling you something? You have to really, you know, when you sit down for an interview with them, you have to really feel them out. Do they really want to talk about this? Or is this something that they don't want to talk about? Do they really want to institute these kind of, you know, animations and graphics and maps and tour of the battlefield into their work? Or do they just want it to be, live in their reader's imagination? You don't want to damage your relationship with your authors either, so.
Thank you. When we're talking about converting NetGalley as printing a whack of material and sending it out physically, we've got a whole new model now.
Mm-hmm.
The first question was about conversion, but I'm curious to see what's the uptake. How are people receiving it, and who's your biggest audience?
Mm-hmm. I think that there's two questions, right? One is about conversion, and I wanted to touch on that because it's sort of an easier answer for NetGalley. We offer a number of reading options. We have our own proprietary web-based sort of a look inside the book, but a secure full text. We use Adobe DRM, so we're taking PDF or EPUB files. We're working directly with Amazon to provide a secure Kindle option for Galleys, also using a PDF. So one of the interesting things, though, about the cost to publishers is that while we take PDF and EPUB files, most publishers are giving us PDFs because most publishers aren't producing EPUB files until after their book has gone to print. So at the Galley stage, they don't have an optimal digital Galley file. And when I look forward, I think that that's one of the things that's going to continue to change. Publishers will start to make EPUB files earlier in the process because they'll want to serve them up immediately. As soon as they possibly can, they won't make that print optimized PDF and then give it to us and we'll web optimize it and put it up. And right now we're only seeing the very largest publishers who have already made that shift. But every publisher wants to give an EPUB file because you want to deliver the best reading experience possible. That's what we want as well. So that's sort of your conversion question. On the take-up of NetGalley, I think it's been a very interesting journey. I started working on this project about 5 years ago, and you would say digital galleys, and people would physically move away from you. Like they would just step backwards. And, so for a while I felt like this digital Galley girl, you'd stand alone. And now I think what's the conversations that I'm having with publishers, every day, it's not about when they're going to do digital galleys. It's just about how that process is going to work and how they can fit it in. So there's been a very, I think a very important shift in how people are thinking about previewing content and about digital content. So we've seen that from the publisher side, and from the reader side, our growth has been tremendous. I mean, we do a lot of data mining, and all of the information that was thrown at us today, a lot of that was very familiar to us, and we're always looking at our statistics. And every month we have this meeting where we're looking at our user growth saying, I can't believe this is not slowing down. And that, and we're incredulous, not because the numbers are so fantastic, but because for a long time, we weren't seeing people. We were looking at our numbers going, okay, 10 people read that digital Galley, and now, it's exponentially grown. So I think we're sort of there, at least with the publishers we're working with.
Now, are you involved in the process whereby somebody reads the digital Galley and then they decide, well, geez, I want to get the print version of this as well? Is that something that you're involved with, or would they then go straight to the publisher and ask for that, or are you got something set up that process, or is that not?
That's a great question. So the question is, are publishers offering print galleys after they give the digital galleys? We do have a way in NetGalley that you can request a print galley. Of all of the titles that are currently on the site, I cannot think of one where the publisher is offering a print galley. Almost universally, and we recommend this too, we say don't offer the print galley, because if you do, you won't help people convert to the new way, to being accustomed to getting a digital galley. And so even though we do it, it's not happening very often.
Would you find that people, or occasions where people read the digital Galley and then decide they want to get print copies?
We find a lot of occasions, not very often, not as often as you would think, but we do find a lot of occasions where people read the digital Galley and then they tweet that they're going to purchase the book. We see a lot of that. So they say, oh my God, Bumped from HarperCollins just came out. I read the digital Galley, now I need to go purchase it. And then all their friends retweet it, and then that's something, so people do want to own the physical object, but they'll often buy it.
I've heard from a number of traditional print media folks, the book review editors, that first, they aren't very keen on electronic galleys, and second, that their current stable of readers and reviewers are not keen, because part of the compensation and benefits of doing a review is that you end up with a print copy of the book. But do you see any movement in that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a question that we get quite a bit. So a couple of things. One of the primary roles of NetGalley is to help publishers sort of sell and evangelize the concept of digital galleys. And so there's a number of ways to do that. We say to our publishers, if you are still planning on offering print galleys to your major review contacts, offer them the digital galley a month earlier, because that's how much ahead of the print galley you're going to have the digital galley. And that's a very powerful incentive to say, I can give you this print galley May 1st, or you can have it right now. And speed is a huge factor for us. And also immediacy of requests. So we see a lot of times when publishers, are on the phone with someone and a publicist is saying, I want to see this, and normally that would require you overnighting it or sending some assistant down to the street to get it to them, and that's not happening anymore. You can be on the phone and deliver that secure galley. So we see that happening quite a bit. And we also see that sometimes it requires the right piece of content. We just did a project with the New York Times on the WikiLeaks book, and that was a book that they were publishing digitally only. And so there's not really a way to offer galleys when you're only publishing a digital copy. And so they had the title up in NetGalley, and they wanted to share it with their key media contacts. And lo and behold, when the New York Times asked them, those people read the galley that way. And so I think it's sort of a process. I mean, it's a little bit about education, it's a little bit about timing, it's a little bit about people becoming more comfortable with the devices, and all of that combined, I think, is definitely moving the meter.
What's the security for the
The Adobe files, we're using Adobe DRM, so you can set an expiration date. So it does, in fact, it doesn't blow up. I have advocated for like a little icon that will actually blow it up, but no one listens to me. So the publisher can set some. They can not allow printing and not allow content copying, and then they can set an expiration date. So it's from about 60 days down to 1 day. The Kindle files, because Amazon's its own kind of universe, right? They have its own rules. So those files don't expire, but they can't be shared. So you are giving, it's exactly the same as a print galley. You're giving it to them and you can't take it back.
Or they can take it away at any time, like George Orwell's. No, I'm just kidding. The concept of galleys is to increase sales for the publisher, and hopefully the bookseller too. But with the e-galleys, are you able to measure and see how that translates into orders and sales?
We don't do any, you can't order anything. We're not a transaction-based site. But in NetGalley, you can see real time who's actually clicking on your titles and which reading option they're choosing. So you can see that at an aggregate level. You can look at trends. So some of our publishers are starting to look at the number of requests for a title versus how many people actually read the title versus how many submit their reviews through NetGalley, and then looking at that overall, as compared to the sales for that title. I don't know that they're putting that sales piece onto it yet, because mostly we're dealing with publicity and marketing folks. But you can also look one by one to see, did that contact that I just pitched, did they actually read the title, and which option did they choose?
So, another question there.
Do you have any consortia of publishers who come in as a group, or is it all individual publishers?
It's mostly individual publishers. Do you mean like a distributor model, or?
No, I'll be honest and say I've looked quite deeply at NetGalley. I really like what you do, but it's expensive for a small publisher. So I'm wondering if there's group pricing.
So the question is there group pricing for small publishers?
Yes, that's a great question. No, it's okay. This is what I do for a living. This is great. We have a number of partnerships. We have a partnership, for example, with the ECPA, which is the Christian Publishing Association. And we have a partnership with the AAUP. We've been talking with the ACP about some discount programs for members. Our intention is not to. I hope that our service is not too expensive, because I am not a millionaire by any means, right? But our intention is to have the service priced so that publishers can experiment, because it is experimental. It's a new way of doing things. I think there's a lot of uses for it, but and so going through some of the member organizations is a way that we can do that.
I'm always looking at how everyone can work together and include the bookseller. But I'm thinking about, so John's got this cool e-catalog, and there's some really cool content that maybe goes to the well, we can talk about professional readers. And then there's the enhanced or video content as well. I'd just like to talk about how these bold new opportunities that you're each taking advantage of and you're each using, how they may be able to work together.
Let me answer that first. One of the great things about moving away from print catalogs and going to any kind of digital catalog, doesn't matter whether it's offline like ours or offline online like ours or an online one, is that we can hook up to all kinds of other stuff, including that Galley, including perhaps snippets from what Melissa's doing. So there's a tremendous, there's just, everything opens up as a possibility of informing book buyers, and depending on the context, media, or depending on the context, maybe even consumers. Although I think that my own take on it is that the catalog and its historical function is still required, and still it's probably still for some time more aimed at intermediaries. So I think some of the other things will be more appropriate for the getting at communities. But there's lots of opportunity for us to hook into other available digital promotion or snippets or whatever through the use of e-catalogs,
So,
for sure.
Is there a blurring the way that there's a blurring between the professional reader and the casual or blogger, reviewer or whatever, and the traditional person who would look at a catalog, and that, like, blurring that distinction between that buyer and the ultimate consumer?
I actually am a little stick in the mud-ish about that idea. I don't think so, because a trade buyer, I'm coming at it from a trade context, and a trade buyer, a good trade buyer, will have a lot of wisdom already about what has worked for them, what hasn't worked for them, and they're, as an audience, they are distinctly different, I think, from a Goodreads reader. I think they really are looking for bulleted points about something. They can't drill deep. One of the big challenges with e-catalogs is time. You've only got an hour, in the current context, you've only got an hour to pitch, I don't know, 200 to 500 titles, depending on how ambitious you are. And you don't even have Harper discovered, to their dismay. They don't have time to wait for web pages to refresh. I mean, it's just, there's not, the way the industry is right now, at any rate, there's no time in a buying appointment. So it has to be zip, zip, zip. And I think that makes it a fairly different experience than the good reader community, reaching out to your communities with smart context.
I guess we're getting down to the punch. So I saw a question here.
Well, just very quick comment,
Okay.
which is that I think there is a small blurring, because I think a lot of catalog companies also learning that being people's data, which appears on consumer websites and stuff, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
fair
I
enough.
think so too. I mean, I think, our site is geared towards professional readers, because in a lot of cases, publishers don't want to give away too many galleys before, and I don't know where I fall on this, honestly. Their take is that giving away too many galleys cuts out of that sales pie. But at the same time, I do agree with Patrick. I think that there's a huge benefit to letting more people preview your content, and doing that earlier, and touching. I mean, digital galleys are, whether they're through NetGalley or not, are amazing, because there's no incremental cost to sending out more of them. So, and you can allow more and more smaller people of influence, like librarians or like those bloggers, to read your content and preview it and start that conversation in more places.
Question.
My question is for Marissa. I thought it was interesting how you said about,
Yes, I can.
okay, about enhanced ebooks and how it changes for each product almost. What do you do on the consumer side, on the reader side, to ensure that their expectation is met? Is there some kind of feedback mechanism? Because they may say, oh, enhanced ebook, there's going to be lots of videos, there's going to be this, and then they get to it and they go, oh, that's not what I thought an enhanced ebook was.
If you're obsessive like me, you check the comments that people are leaving. I mean, it's so new that we really don't have a lot of feedback yet. So really, it's extremely anecdotal. I'm just, because I'm excited about the titles, I'm trolling the site. Somebody said, here's a great example, this download took me too long. And I'm calculating in my head, well, how much video and other stuff was in that book to make that? So the next time around, maybe I'll make it a little bit less. I mean, it's so new that I'm just finding out the way, in a way other consumers are finding out, because there's no data coming back yet. Does that answer your question?
There's no data coming back?
Not, very little in terms of, because we've made so few, what works in fiction might not work in nonfiction, might not work in a cooking book. So we've made so few that we don't know yet what is the reader experience, the user experience. It's just, for me, extremely anecdotal of what I'm reading and hearing myself.
I think we have time for one more question in the back.
Not talking about anecdotal, heard anecdotally that there's been a fair kind of resistance or pushback from the institutional markets to electronic catalogs. Librarians don't seem to like them a lot, and post-secondary people like that are also concerned. So have you got any sort of experience or anything that you run into that?
I haven't yet. I'll bet that some of our sales reps could tell me, but I'll find that out at our sales conference in April. I've made some visits to specific customers, including library wholesalers, but their point of view might be a little bit different than the people you're talking about. So I think we are going to have a good response from library wholesalers, but they act more like a traditional buying situation. So what I'd love to be able to go and talk to groups of librarians to find out what their take on this stuff I haven't done it yet.
I will tell you, though, that from the digital Galley perspective, librarians are huge NetGalley enthusiasts. They are the fastest growing member type. They're our second biggest member type. They have just kind of latched onto the concept and have really been very enthusiastic about it.
Well, I want to thank you guys for a fantastic discussion. We did have great discussions that we didn't even get a chance to get into about legalities and territory and all kinds of wonderful anecdotes about Steve Tyler. Thank you very much for the great questions you guys asked, and we're going to be moving on to the next session.